This session is going to be in English. We had a Spanish one yesterday. It's going to be recorded. If you're interested to listen to the one in Spanish, it's going to be published on the YouTube Prime Solutions Tax and Legal channel. And today I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Giovanna Bernal. I'm a Panama attorney. And Mario Tapia Saldaña is also with us. He's a certified public accountant. He's Panamanian with more than 15 years of experience. And today we're going to explain what are the updates on the Panama accounting records for holdings and for offshore entities. If you have questions, please feel free to write them down and we will be very happy to answer them. These changes have been done last year in November. We had a law 52 of 2016 for offshore entities, and those offshore entities had to keep accounting records. The main difference is that now we have to register agents, lawyers, we call register agents because when we incorporate a company, we have companies and corporations and private foundations need to have registered agents. So we'll have to keep those accounting records from this year. So this is the reason of this webinar. We won't talk about companies or individuals that do business in Panama that have also, for example, in the case of corporation, they have registered agents. And if they do business in Panama, those companies have to declare taxes and submit annual returns. That hasn't changed, and that will be maybe at another topic and another day. And feel free to ask any questions. You can write it on the Q&A section. We had these changes because Panama is following some standards with the OECD, and also because we have to show that our country is complying with those standards of transparency. And it's not only Panama, but other jurisdictions such as the BVI, Belize, Nevis, they are all asking their clients to keep accounting records. In the case of Panama, the registered agent needs to request copies of those accounting records for local and for international holdings, for local holdings as well, and also for offshore companies that are doing business, commerce out of Panama. And I say out of Panama because we have a territorial tax system. So companies that do business, that have business license in Panama, they need to have accounting records and then submit an annual return every year during before March 31st. For offshore companies or holdings that do not do business in Panama, they don't have to submit annual returns, but have accounting records. In the case of a local holding, when we say holding, we mean companies, corporations, or private foundations that own property, that own a bank account or an investment account as well. Those companies do not do business or can also hold shares of a structure. In this case, those companies have to provide to the registered agent every year supporting documentation that can show the financial situation of the company. For example, the value of the assets, the liabilities, and the income. In the case of companies, corporations that do business offshore, they'll have to keep accounting records, and the law requires that they have to keep a journal, at least a journal and a general ledger. If you have any questions at the end, you can ask us because the reason why this law is very broad is because you can show with a balance sheet or with an income statement, or in case you don't want to give your registered agent all the documents and the registries that are related to a journal or a general ledger, right? There is also the possibility to give your registered agent the financial statements. If you are a company or a corporation that already carry on business, you probably send it to your bank, because most banks nowadays are asking their clients for AML purposes information on the financial situation. And some of the concepts that this law is introducing is what is the meaning of the accounting records, what is the meaning of support documents, and what is the meaning of financial statements. This might differ from the definition that our Code of Commerce has nowadays for companies that do business in Panama. And these are concepts exclusively for the offshore and the holding. So accounting records is information that can determine the financial situation of the company. The support documents is related to contracts, receipts, invoices, and documents that can show what the company, what are the transactions that a corporation, what the activity that the corporation is doing. Because, for example, in the offshore industry, it's very common, for example, to use a corporation to offer a service. A consultancy service agreement will be a supporting document, and perhaps a balance sheet or an income statement showing those invoices, those, for example, 12 invoices in a year, perhaps some expenses, and that can be reduced or registered in the accounting system, or can be shown in a balance sheet and the income statement, which are reports that belong to the financial statements. And then we have the definition of the financial statements, which have the balance sheet, the income statement, the statement of changes in equity, the cash flow statement with the notes. You can see that this is a much broad concept, and this law is not asking corporations to provide the registered agents with financial statements, but accounting records. These are the deadlines that we have now. In the case of the fiscal period of 2021, the deadline to submit or to provide the accounting records to the registered agent is of the 11th of May of 2022. So you'll have to provide your registered agent with the accounting records of the fiscal year of 2021. Then for the next years, the following years, the deadline to provide your registered agent with the accounting records is the 30th of April. And then we have another deadline, which is the 15th of July, to submit to our revenue office that is called Dirección General de Ingresos, our declaration. That declaration is not in place yet, but in the near time, we're going to receive that example of that declaration. But we'll have to register agents. We will have to declare those companies that we are registered agents, and we'll have to mention the name of the companies that have submit us or provide the accounting records, and those that did not provide the accounting records on time. That has to be done every year, every July 15th of each year. And another typical questions that we get is what companies must keep accounting records? Because I have a limited liability company, or I have a branch that is a foreign company that is registered at the public registry, or I have a corporation and I have that only owns an apartment in the United Kingdom, for example, or I have a company that is that was that had a domicile in the BVI, but now has a domicile in Panama, do I have to keep accounting records as well? And the answer is yes. Is nowadays all companies effective from 2017, they have to keep accounting records. So we have corporations, we have foundations of private interest, we have liability companies and other local foreign companies that we don't use them anymore, but are in our code of commerce and that have domicile or that are registered in Panama. And we have penalties to enforce this law. We have for the entities, corporations, foundations that do not comply providing the information of the accounting to the registered agent, the penalty goes from $5,000 to $1 million. And then plus the strike off of the company. The strike off means that if you don't comply providing the information to the registered agent, they will give you a penalty. Plus the company will have its rights suspended for a year at the public registry, meaning that you cannot do business, you cannot do transactions with it, only go to court in case you have a case against you. You can defend yourself with a lawyer is the only thing you can do. And once that year is passed and you haven't solved the situation, the problem, for example, you didn't pay your taxes within 3 years, or you didn't comply with the accounting records obligation, the company after 1 year without doing anything will be dissolved by the government, will be liquidated by them. And we have also penalties for us as registered agents. We'll get fines if we don't comply and we don't get our clients to provide us with those documents on time. The fine goes from $5,000 to $100,000. And another typical question is if the accounting records can be done elsewhere. And the answer is yes. You can have them done by your accountant in your country of origin. And what we will need is a form that we normally ask when we incorporate a corporation of a private foundation with the name of the legal entity, the name of the person in charge, the address where the accounting records will be held. And you'll have to send us those accounting records every year. There are some exceptions for providing the information to the registered agent. It doesn't mean that they don't have to do accounting. They might have to do accounting, but the exceptions are for not giving the information, the copies to the registered agent. Those are companies that are listed in the stock exchange, the stock exchange of Panama or any other stock exchange in the world. Those that are owned by international organizations or by a multilateral organism or by a state. And the third exception is those Panamanian companies that own ships or vessels, or that are ships builder or charterers registered in the Merchant Marine of Panama. They have to be registered in Panama in order to have this exception. So if it's registered, the vessel is registered in the Marshall Islands and does chartering, it has to provide the registered agent with the accounting records every year. Okay, and these are some examples of some of the typical purpose of incorporation of this type of foundations of private interest or corporation. The most common one is to hold property in Panama or property elsewhere for asset protection or succession planning in the case of the foundation of private interest. In that case, that the company will only hold property, the document that we suggest you to provide the registered agent is a balance sheet. And why is that? Because in the balance sheet, we'll see the assets. We're going to see if it has liabilities, it has a mortgage with the bank, or if the company has any income in case it's renting the property. So another supporting documentation that is also, I think, very important in the case, especially in the case of Panama, because in Panama, in the public deed, we'll see the mortgage. So in that way, we're gonna make sure that the company has has a mortgage in the deed. So that would be also good to have. And in the case of the Panama Corporation or a foundation that is holding a bank account, we'll definitely need to one of these two, the bank statements for the fiscal year. If you think it's too much because it's a lot of documents to have, there's also the chance to get a balance sheet or an income statement. I recommend to have a balance sheet and ask an accountant to do that, because in that way you'll have briefly the information and it will be easier to understand the financial situation of the entity rather than checking on accounting statements every month. And it's a lot of paperwork and documents that you have to share via WeTransfer, or I don't know, through your Google Drive. And it will be much better to send just a PDF with your balance sheet and an income statement done by your accountant. And the third situation that we have is an investment account. Panamanian corporations can hold investment accounts in Panama or elsewhere. So for example, if you have an investment account at UBS Bank, and you'll need to have, you need to get the account statements every month, and you can share that. The law typically says that you can share the custody account statement of every month, or you can also ask your accountant to make for you a financial statement with a balance sheet or an income statement, And in the case of corporations, I don't say private foundations because private foundations cannot do business. Their main purpose is to hold, protect, and for succession planning. It's similar like a trust. So in this case, I would talk about only corporations, because corporations can do business transactions elsewhere. They can do trading, services, wholesale trading, retail, and they can offer also services such as consultancy, agency agreements, and so on. So in this particular case, corporations that do business transaction, they have to keep accounting records, and definitely you will need an accountant to sign for you the financial statements and provide your registered agent with a balance sheet and the income statement. That is the minimum. Of course, as I said before, in the case that you have probably a trading company, the bank is already asking you to provide the financial statement. And in some cases, they even are asking financial statements that has to be audited by an audit or an accountant firm. Okay, what if I haven't used my entity? There we had COVID, and there is individuals that they set up a Panama corporation for the purpose of investing through the friendly nations visa, for example, to do business in Panama, but then there was COVID and they couldn't return back to Panama, and they are still struggling to come back. Or maybe I had this company for some type of business, and at the end I didn't do it because I got busy with something else, and I have this Panama corporation, but I haven't done anything yet. So what can I do? A solution could be to provide an affidavit certifying that the company didn't have any operations or activity. And I keep stressing on the balance sheet, because if you didn't do anything with the company, perhaps your lawyer asks you to send you an invoice in the name of the corporation on the tax government fee, or the tax government fee, and also the lawyer's fees, because the registered agent will charge you yearly an annual fee for being a registered agent. So that is an invoice. That is something that can be recorded, right? And also another option could be that your accountant can certify having checked your records and your supporting documentation, certifying that you didn't invoice within that year, and that the only expenses that you have and that the accountant have seen on the financial situation on the corporation is that there is only an invoice from the lawyer and about the tax government fee in that case, or if maybe you had other expenses, maybe setting up a web page, or I don't know, those supporting documentation, they have to be certified by the accountant. And the formalities. What are the formalities in order to give those accounting records? In the case that the accounting records are registered by an accountant in Panama, we follow the International Financial Reporting Standards. So in that case, you have to follow that. If you decide that you want your accountant in the US, for example, to do that, maybe they have a different standard, which is called US GAAP. So you can do that. You can get those records registered by your accountant back home, and you can use that accounting standard. And that's it. And that's it. We have examples. We have some examples. I don't know, Mario, if you want to mention something about your experience, be doing this type of accounting records for your clients that have properties in Panama. I'm pretty sure that accountants will be very busy nowadays, because a lot of people in Panama have corporations to the only purpose of have the properties on the name of the corporation or the foundation. It's very typical. So we're going to, the registration will have to have that information.
Yes, as Giovanna said, all the company has to make their accounting records. That's the way that we have to do here in Panama. At least you have any expense like the government tax fee or your agent resident fee. You have to make the records of those expenses, and you will have, or you will obtain an income statement, right? And then you can continue with a balance sheet. If the company doesn't have a bank account, all those expenses you will have to put it like as accounts payable shareholder. That's the way to record. When the owner of the company pay on behalf of the company. So in my experience, you have to make all the accounting records every year for your companies. And then with this new law, you will have to provide these records to your resident agent in order to complete and avoid fines that, as you can see in the presentation, are from $5,000 to $1 million. So I think that it will take few minutes to complete all your records and send it to your lawyers in order to be free of these kind of fines, right?
Right. And the obligation was actually from 2017. The difference now is that the corporations will have to provide that information to the registered agent.
Yes, Giovanna, we have a question. In regards to the assets holding companies, I understand from the presentation that the balance sheet and the accounting records do not need to be signed by CPA. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. There is a regulation from the law of 2016 that says that if you do business with an offshore corporation, you need to have those your balance sheet and the income statement signed by your accountant, the accounting records by the accountant. But for a holding, it's not necessary. But maybe in the future they will They will establish some regulations, but we are waiting for those yet to see if that
Yeah, because
changes.
the law indicates that it's only a balance sheet. They doesn't ask for an audit statement of financial statements. They only ask for a balance sheet. So the about the question, you don't have to. They don't have to be signed by the CPA. That's the answer.
Right, it can be done also on digital, those platforms. In Panama, we use one called Peachtree. It's very popular, but you can use any other one or in Excel, I believe, but QuickBooks.
Yes, you can use any magnetic program. It's okay with that, but you have to provide your two things: your financials, the balance sheet at least, and the supporting documentation. That's very important.
And if the accountant is done in Panama, that software has to be certified, right, Mario? By an accountant.
If the accountant is from it's foreign.
It's done in Panama. If you have to do the accounting yourself, and for example with Peachtree, which is the one with Sage, it's now called Sage. You open an account for your client. That software has to be certified by you as an accountant, right?
Yes. You have to certify your accounting software only one time. It's one time during the using of that software. Because if you are going to provide your accounting records in magnetic form, you have to certify the software, indicating that it can be the security. It has a lot of security that you cannot change when you close the accounting period. You can be edit or change the numbers, right? So it's very important also to certify once your accounting software.
Okay.
In regards, okay, we have another question. In regards to companies that operate locally in Panama that file an annual return, is this suffice to comply with the reporting of the accounting records? Does the company need to provide the supporting documents to the registry agent?
That's a very good question. In that case, you don't have to provide the supported documentation by this law. Maybe your registered agent will ask for it just to make sure that you are declaring and that you have a business license, and that because you're locally doing business in Panama. Some activities do not need a business license, like agricultural activities. So if you do that, you don't need it, but you're getting income locally by source, so you have to declare, right? So by this law, you don't have to provide that every year, but maybe to understand the financial situation and the profile of the entity and the client for AML, anti-money laundering purposes, maybe the registered agent will ask. But that is more on the decision on the procedure of the registered agent.
But Giovanna, they don't have to provide to the resident agent these records, but they have to keep their accounting records in order. The company has to keep their accounting records. They have to certify the accounting program, and they have to print all these reports and keep it in their office until the DGI or the estatal entity ask for them. So they have to keep their accounting records. They don't have to send it to the resident agent, but they have to keep accounting records. That's
right.
All the companies have to keep accounting records.
Exactly. All the companies need to, once the year finishes, all that information there has to be summarized and sent it to the accountant. So the accountant will do the annual return for you. Before, in the past, in December, there was approved a new law for accountants. But because before, if you earn your earnings and your net income was less than $50,000, you could, let's say, submit your annual return by yourself without being signed by an accountant. But now that law was changed. This is the law 280 in December. And even though you earn less than $50,000, or I don't know, it can be anything, you need an accountant to help you just to sign off your annual return.
Yes, exactly. They have, okay, and Giovanna, it's very important also, and I'm going to mention again, to certify the program, because certifying the program means that you can make all your records in magnetic form, and you don't have to do it manually. Because if the regulatory entity, in this case the DGI, asks you information and you don't have the certification, they will ask your accounting records, your books. And if you don't have the certification, if you don't have the books in order, the fine for each month is $500. So it's very important always to have the certification to avoid doing this manually every month. So if you have one time the certification, you can make all your accounting records in magnetic form. You just have to print the reports, and that's it.
Okay. Yes, I had a client that asked me yesterday. He has a holding company just to hold the property in Panama, an apartment. And he said to me, okay, last year I had only I had my corporation owning the property, but a month ago I'm renting it. What should I do? So I tell them, okay, this year you just have to show your accounting records for last year, but from the next year, if you're renting the property, you have to declare because the company is getting income, generating income in Panama, so it needs to declare that income on renting. Yes, I don't know if anyone has another question. We're going to send you the recording of these webinars so you can have it handy in case this law applies to you. Or if you need any information, please feel free to contact us. We're gonna send us our information as well. And if there are no other questions, we will finish this webinar. We want to thank you for being here, and please keep tuned. Have a great day.